Hello and welcome back to another video. Today here again on Forza Horizon 5 to look at the second brand new car added as part of the Series 11 playlist, which is this 2020 Xpeng P7. You can win this Xpeng by getting 20 points in the spring season, which is active until next Thursday. It's available in several very dull colours, including one slightly more interesting red. It is, of course, a Chinese electric car, and not actually the first one we have in Forza, with the Neo EP9 added a while back, which is, of course, short for Episode 9. This has, of course, been added as an alternative to the Tesla, which Forza aren't able to license for reasons. All jokes aside, though, this is apparently far better than the Tesla, and far better built, which, to be fair, isn't all that hard. It produces 424 horsepower and 655 newton-meters of torque and weighs 2,060 kilos because it's an electric car. It's going to be quite heavy, putting it at A-Class 722 from standard. Apart from that, there isn't really much interesting to say about the Xpeng, apart from the fact its name is of course short for Excited Penguin. Here in Forza Vista we can see it's a normal kind of saloon car with space for stuff and things in the front, and of course in the rear, although there's not much depth in there, probably because there's some flammable batteries below the floor, which is always good to see. The interior is very much like a Tesla, except probably slightly nicer, and again we'll have better build quality in here, and no stupid screen in the middle that'll fail all the time, and a proper steering wheel, not a yoke or whatever Tesla call theirs. Is a bit of a joke. Its top speed standard is 119 on the flat or the downhill. As you can see, it's kind of slightly gear limited to that. However, even with no upgrades, we can head over to gearing, switch this all the way to speed, and even adjust that slightly so that we're getting the maximum we possibly can out of it. And then it will continue to climb as high as 191 on the flat, and even break 200 on the downhill. And this is stock, remember. With a Forza wing and drag tyres, it will drop down into B-Class, where you can then squeeze on a racing front aero as well if you put some slightly heavier wheels on, and I was also able to bring the track width out slightly and fit a race diff, all within B-Class. With those upgrades, or rather downgrades, and a far better paint colour for an electric car, it is of course time for some Horizon Open races. So to begin with, I joined mid-adventure for the Reservorio Sprint, and immediately realised I hadn't tuned my gears and the car was awful. So I left, and after a quick adjustment, I was ready to try again. By the time I got back in, it was conveniently timed to start a new set of races, beginning with Junas Blancas. It actually handles really well, but lacks top speed. I did manage to finish second though, even though this was kind of slightly more top speed oriented, being a sprint, albeit only out of 4 cars, after a Nissan for some reason drove off into the desert quite early on. I did, however, still lose to a Hyundai. Next up was Horizon Mexico Circuit, where I had an amazing battle with the Civic and Skyline. It was an absolutely brilliant race. Who would have thought a Civic, a Skyline, and a Chinese electric thing would have such a good battle around there? Mostly because they just out-dragged me so much on the straights, but I out-handled them in the corners, so I kept cutting underneath them, getting switchbacks, and even going all around the outside in some cases. But whatever I did, they came blasting back on the straights. But it was still a brilliant, brilliant race. I really enjoyed that one. And finally we moved on to the Riviera Sprint, which was the worst of the 3 races for me, being very speed and power oriented, meaning I finished in a very average position of 3rd out of 6, which is also where I finished in the championship. So after a quick revisit to the upgrade shop to get the car up to the top of A-Class, so a whole class above with upgrades rather than downgrades, we have these parts installed, bringing it up to A800. After those A-Class upgrades, I joined mid-adventure again. Unfortunately, having changed the upgrades, I forgot that I then had to redo the gears that I had adjusted before, so like last time, I had to leave to fix them. I joined again in time for the Desansar Dorado Sprint, which went surprisingly well after some cars decided they'd rather be in walls than on the circuit, finishing 2nd out of the 6 starting cars. That was the last race of an adventure, so it was on to the next one. starting with the Riviera Sprint with only 3 participants, one of whom left midway through, so the other one decided to slow down to give me a race, which I failed at quite badly and he won. Anyway, second up was another sprint which only had 2 other racers, one of which was in a bone shaker, so that didn't go very well either. And finally was the Chihuahua circuit, with a total of 5 participants, which went very well, as it's almost all handling, entirely corners with a little bit of acceleration, which is basically what this car's good at. A rather annoying bone shaker got in the way, but he rather amusingly missed a checkpoint, so I somehow managed to finish second in that one. And that is going to be all for a first look at the Xpeng P7. Stock, it's kind of as you would imagine. It's a heavy electric car that doesn't handle very well. It's kind of like a budget alternative to the Tesla that they can't license, although in most ways it's a better car than that. Downgraded to B-Class, surprisingly, was better than upgraded to A-Class, for me at least, with the tunes I quickly threw together and put on this. Downgrading it, there wasn't really much options, but upgrading it, you could probably do it a lot better than I did. So B-Class seemed to work reasonably well. It's kind of an average car in that, I would say, and A-Class, not good. I could be wrong, with somebody who knows what they're doing might be able to get it better than I did. But for a first look at the Xpeng P7, that is going to be all. So thank you very much for watching, and I will be back with the next video very soon.